Hey, I'm Doc Steph. Welcome and thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of Let's Heal Together. Today, I will be talking about boosting your emotional resilience. So let's get started. What is emotional resilience and why does it need to be boosted? Emotional resilience is when we can calm our frantic minds after encountering a negative experience. It is intrinsic motivation, an inner force by which we can hold ourselves through all the downsides of life. Now, physical health is an essential part of our lives. We want to be fit and healthy so that we live longer. But how often do you think about your emotional health or wellness, though? Our emotional well being is just as important as our physical. Being emotionally healthy makes you resilient to stress and an energy booster to have a positive outlook on life. Have you taken notice of your emotions, both positive and upsetting, as they arise? Have you embraced the positive feelings and neglected the negative ones? And how well do you process them? There are many benefits from boosting emotional resilience that helps you focus and think more clearly. Be curious. Explore and understand your feelings and thoughts. So, if you feel like you have been ignoring your emotional wellness, then you should continue to listen to this podcast to get a boost. Here are a few reasons to focus on your emotional wellness. One, everyone feels stressed and overwhelmed from time to time, but prolonged periods of stress can be harmful and almost unidentifiable. Eventually, it can affect your ability to carry out everyday activities, your relationships suffer, and detrimental to your overall mental health. Two, then this one is a good one. When you're tired, you cannot function at your best. You're focused on time. How long before I can leave? Let me hurry up and finish this project. Have you ever reread something you wrote and couldn't believe you wrote it? That's because you were tired. You made some thoughtless mistakes, and had you taken your time and rested well, you could have produced a better product. The bad news is how you act or behave toward negative experiences and feelings. Your negative emotions impact others. You set the mood for your environment or surroundings. Have you heard this song, Bad Vibes? Well, that is what you produce or give out. It becomes toxic for others to endure or be around you. When I ignore my emotional wellness, like when I was caregiving for a loved one, I ignore my overall wellness. I know we associate caring with love, but what if the person makes it difficult to care for them? Nothing I did for them was good enough. We argued most of the time. Although I was sad, tired, and irritated most of the time, I hung in there because I genuinely cared about the person. I went against all advice to stop caregiving for this person because I was more concerned about the impact on them than myself. Eventually, I was mentally and physically exhausted. I just could not function anymore. So I reached out for help. Then earlier, early on in my life, I tried being silent at work when I did not have anything nice to say. Silence led to not standing up for myself. I endured my anguish events to the point of stomach ulcers that were worse than labor pain. Keeping each event bottled up inside did more damage than not. Emotionally, I was angry all the time until physically I was in excruciating pain. It came down to deciding to either tolerate the pain or deal with uncomfortable situations. I chose the latter. Therefore, ignoring our emotional wellness can impact our overall health. Now, let's talk about ways to release negative emotions and burdens to build resilience by protecting our feelings from unnecessary hardship. 1. Awareness is key. Being aware of your thoughts and feelings. The first step to improving your emotional wellness is actively monitoring your thoughts and feelings. Rather than waiting until you are emotionally overwhelmed, check in with your feelings regularly. The more attention you pay, the more under your control they will be. So let me ask you, are you in touch with your feelings? When was the last time you checked in and thought about it? Well, I remember my manager would get on my everlasting nerve. She would call me out in team meetings over everyone else. Like, really? Do you wake up with my name on your brain? The problem was that she would do it in a condescending way to get a rise out of me. And guess what? I would feed into it and ruin my day. I had to take some time and think about why I allowed this person to get under my skin. I would ask myself why I felt a certain way toward her. Then I decided just how much power I would allow her to have over my emotions. There also there was also the time I was caregiving for a loved one, as I mentioned. The person being cared for made it difficult for me to care for her. She was manipulative and demanding, like I was a slave, until I became powerless. I spent a great deal of time praying and reflecting on myself. Discovering the magnitude of my frustration stemmed from childhood. I carried the feelings this person imposed on me when I was a child. So every service request she made and every demand made me recall our relationship when I was a child. Many of us harbor trauma, pain, and wounds that have not been resolved inside of us and let them impact our attitudes presently. And that means that we may appear to be in our current situation or um, present in that moment, but when we are triggered, we're taken back to the time that we were traumatized. So, in other words, we are at that present time and not currently in present time, if you know what I mean. We are not always encouraged to get in touch with our emotions, which brings me to my battle with depression. On the surface, it would appear that I am strong, independent, and upbeat all the time, in which I am, but sometimes internally, I am at war. I have learned it is okay not to be okay. I have an excellent support team and a therapist on hand so that I can enjoy life. I have gotten over putting on a facade to make everyone think I'm okay. If I'm not doing well and someone asks, I normally will respond with, I will be, and I would be okay. I am determined to reach my fullest potential and live my best life. So, number two, that brings me to reaching out. Spending time with people you care about is a great way to keep an even emotional keel. The key is to surround yourself with the positive lights in your life. Spend less time with toxic people or those who drain your energy. Reach out to the loved ones who love you back and make you feel re energized. My go to for positivity, um, as I just mentioned, a support team. My closest friend is my go to person for support, positivity, and a good laugh. We have been friends since childhood, and she has accepted me just as I am. We have literally grown together, not only in age, but mentally as well. We celebrate our triumphs and we work through the trials and challenges of life, all while living over 1,300 miles apart. And I also keep in touch with my spirituality, which is everything to me. I am a minister and servant of God whom I pray, praise, and worship consistently. I never walk alone because I believe He's always with me, even during the most challenging times. It is my faith that keeps me alive and functioning. So I rely on God to energize me at my lowest points in life. And also, I had reached a point of being emotionally drained and depressed. I reached out to a therapist who helped me through that difficult time while going through the healing process. And I just want to pause just to say that it's okay to need help. It's we have to get past our pride and our ego because mental health is very serious. And if you're not doing okay, reach out to a professional, a friend, or something or someone that can help pull you out or out of whatever you're going through. So that takes us to number 3. Establish better boundaries. If you want to be in control of your emotions, you need to be in control of your life. Learn that it's also okay to say no. Don't apologize for focusing on your own goals. You will naturally feel more emotionally secure when you learn that healthy boundaries are and start enforcing them. Let me back up. You need to learn what healthy boundaries are and start enforcing them. Therefore, a time I didn't set boundaries, this is how I felt. My family has been my biggest cannot say no to because I fear it would lead to conflict or confrontation. The problem was that I opened myself up to being the superhero. I was doing things I did not want to do to make them happy. Everyone was happy and continued living their lives while I was overwhelmed. I learned that overcoming fear is a process, but it encapsulates other emotions. Once I began to say no, I felt rejected, and most of all, I was no longer needed, which could stem from abandonment issues. Working through all those emotions became rewarding over time. So, therefore, when you're setting boundaries, it's a process because it takes time for us to work through all of those emotions that we attain from not having any boundaries at all. So whether family, friends, or work relationships, I worried about saying no because I did not want to disappoint anyone or hurt their feelings. I would say no, then worry about how they felt about me or whether they would work it out for themselves. I would think about calling to see how they made out or test the waters to see if they still like me. It was hard to say no at work because I thought it reflected my work ethic. Like I could not accomplish the task or that I was incompetent. No one ever told me that saying no is a part of self care. I realized that it's okay that I cannot accommodate everyone, and neither can you. I felt like my life was not my own, but after practicing how to communicate no, I was finally in the driver's seat of my own life. Setting boundaries gives us a sense of empowerment. Besides, if you stop saying no, you will dig an endless well of yeses. Okay? Number 4, reframe failure. Nothing can torpedo emotional wellness as failure can. You might feel perfectly content one day, and after some sort of failure, you will be in shambles. The easiest way to deal with this is to reframe failure. Don't view failure as a negative. It is simply a learning experience. You fail, you learn, and you try again. Now, failure from my perspective, believe it or not, when I fail at something, I am reminded of the nursery rhyme I learned in kindergarten. If at first you don't succeed, try again. It is like a lovely tune floating around in my head. For instance, I was excited about starting my business. I envisioned it, put it on paper, submitted it to IRS, and it got approved. I thought, okay, I'm all set. I thought it was a foolproof plan and worked hard at it, but it turned out not as successful as I imagined it would be. Every year I wanted to give up because I did not see much increase in supporters. Instead, I would research my ways I would research ways to improve the business, like doing these podcasts for the new year. Yay! The point is that I turned failure into an opportunity to be more creative until I achieve a success. Again, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And that's something that most successful people don't tell you is how many times they failed before they got where they are now. So it's a process. Failure should be expected, or maybe not. Maybe you jump, you know, head on into success, or maybe it's your season. However the case may be, at some point you may feel that you failed, but it's an opportunity. Okay, number 5, stop brooding. How often do you sit around stewing over something that bothers you? If you are like most people, it happens more often than you would like to admit. If you want to break this cycle, practice distracting yourself when the brooding starts. Get up and take a walk. Tidy your desk. Whatever you choose, keep working on it, and eventually brooding will be a thing of the past. How do we get out of a brooding mood, mode, however you want to call it? For instance, how many times have you listened to a friend repeating the same incident? You thought, are you still brooding over this? Then you try to avoid that person to keep from hearing the same conversation again. Now, think about it. When you think about a time when you have talked about the same thing repeatedly to your friend. Maybe you haven't realized it. I am definitely I'm definitely guilty of brooding, especially after a breakup. When I was on the receiving end of a breakup, it felt like I did not get closure. My every thought or conversation was about him for quite a while. I would be at work trying to hold back my tears. Going out with friends did not help, or anything else I tried to preoccupy my mind with. Then one day, I decided to list the pros and cons of our relationship. You know, what was good and what was bad. What did I get out of the relationship? Is something I asked myself that started me on the list of pros and cons. When I read everything I put on paper, I became less concerned about the breakup and could move on with my life. Yeah, that is what worked for me. Something as simple as reflecting on our relationship. Our mind is powerful. It is so powerful. And what we choose to focus on can hinder the importance of self. That leads us to number 6. Choose optimism. Even though it doesn't always feel like it, you are in control of your feelings. You can choose how to react to situations. I would strongly suggest you do your best to look at the positive side of things. You can't be optimistic 100% of the time, but you will feel emotionally stronger the more you commit to it. My typical reaction to challenging situations were okay. Have you ever known someone who seems bubbly all the time, even during tough times? They just make you sick and you you think they are oblivious to their surroundings. On the other hand, we may also question how do they do it and what it feels like to be that way. When you really think about it, they have chosen not to let life get them down. Isn't that cool? They are in control of their emotions. It sure changed my perspective and challenged me to give it a try. What about those tough times or situations? Everything is not as tough as we perceive it to be. Perspective has the power to impact the way we respond to complex problems. I used to think I was a slow thinker, and someone said I was an overthinker. In either case, my thinking made me hypercritical about specific situations where I felt powerless or ineffective. I would try to hide my feelings while questioning myself and my abilities. At work, I was always thrown into the fire to put it out. I would get so upset because it felt like I was getting picked on because no one else was assigned, these projects. But I discovered I do my best work under pressure. I maybe others saw that in me. I do not know if working well under pressure is good or bad. However, it contradicts the idea that I'm a slow thinker or an overthinker. I respond naturally to pressure with the knowledge I already have inside of me, leaving no room to overthink it. If we change our perspective, we will discover our true self that will boost our confidence. So, those people that I thought were so overly bubbly were actually in control of their environment. They were blocking out pessimism and maintaining optimism. I thought about how happy they seemed and how much happier I would be if I used the same concept. I'm not saying that you would never have negative thoughts. We could, but we can turn them into something positive by changing our perspective. Choosing optimism is an attainable goal. Number 7, set realistic goals. I like having big, audacious goals, and so should you. That said, don't forget to set some more realistic goals along the way. Striving for and regularly reaching a specific goal is a significant emotional boost. On top of that, hitting this smaller goal propels you towards your grander vision. Now, let me tell you my experience in setting and checking on my goals. As I stated earlier, every year I take an assessment of my business. I was mainly looking at my failures. However, I discovered that my business plan was lopsided. I did not plan out short-term versus long-term goals accurately. I was under the impression that I had to reach my goal simultaneously instead of taking smaller steps to get to the more significant actions. Sometimes we have a vision or idea and leap right into the full picture. That is looking at the bigger picture without considering all the colors needed to finish the painting. That's if you're an artist. So, we all can relate to taking our first steps and walking. We had to crawl first, but the goal was to walk and then run. It is the same with any goal we set, whether in our personal life, employment, or business. Crawl a little, then get up and walk. until you could take off running. I went back and looked at my goals, checking to see if I accomplished my short term goals, crossing things off or not. What was missing that kept me from reaching my long term goal? One, it was me procrastinating and not making the time. And second, marketing and maintaining those I wanted to serve. I jumped straight into my long term goal. Like, I'm here now. What? What's next? My big mistake, I had not checked on my short term goals or put much work into them. I was too busy trying to reach the end, sprinting instead of crawling first, then walking into the big picture so that I can run. Number 8, learn how to accept change. No matter how hard you try to fight it, change is inevitable. Change in our world, our homes, and even within ourselves. You will be much happier and emotionally sound if you choose to accept it. Better yet, why not fully embrace it? View change as excitement, a chance to start anew. Let's talk about unwanted change. Many people dislike change because we become content with the way things are, even when it's not good for us. Sometimes it is the fear of the unknown, so why risk it? That means we're thinking about the negative aspect of change over the positive. Listen, we all have faced an unwanted change with COVID-19, sending us into a pandemic. It had a massive impact on my life. I had to work from home and prepare my lesson plans for an online community. My caregiving dynamics had changed. I had to remain in the house with my loved one all day and night. It was challenging, and all I could think about was how things used to be. I wanted to get back in the world once again, be around other people. I was all zoomed out. Like, really? Is this our new norm? Then I got tired of wearing a mask. I couldn't wear my lip gloss. That's what I thought about. I'm sure some of you have reasons for not liking this kind of change. Unfortunately, some of you have suffered from this unwanted change. Please let me know about your unwanted change. Maybe we can laugh or cry together. Now let's talk about experiencing a wanted change. I remember moving out of state twice, once to Seattle, Washington, and the other to Dallas, Texas. The first time I moved because I needed a change. I was overwhelmed with my current life and lacked focus on my work. The opportunity presented itself to relocate. I took it. My job paid for the move. I started relaxing when the movers came and packed up my apartment. They told me not to move a muscle. The move became an adventure that felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I lived in Seattle for 2 years. I did not know a soul. It was just my kids and me. In this change experience, I finally had time to focus on ourselves and, more importantly, myself. Personal growth is what I got from the move. The second time I moved was a spiritual journey. This time I took a buyout from my job and walked away from everything. I packed up and moved to Dallas, Texas. I had a friend who took us in until I found my own place. I could live on my savings for over a year before needing a job. It allowed me time to be there for my young son to adjust to the change. My first job there was at a church where I sat under the tutelage of Bishop T.D. Jakes and assisted his staff pastors. I went on mission trips and served some of the survivors of Katrina, which deepened my faith. My prayer life and empathy increased in serving the bereaved and the community that had suffered a loss. This move enabled me to experience serving more in ministry and gave significant meaning to my spirituality. It was that was just a few of the things I experienced spiritually from this move, and I lived there for 5 years before returning back to Washington, D.C. And finally, number 9, self-compassion. How do you talk to yourself? No matter how positive you think you are likely far more negative than you would be to a close friend. Would you ever call a close friend some of the things you have called yourself? Make a concerted effort to stop your negative self-talk whenever it emerges. You will be more confident, happy, and emotionally well when you do. Now, self-compassion taught me to fall in love with myself. I began listening to and tending to my own needs first. I surround myself with people who love and respect me because when others love me, it is easier for me to see just how much I deserve to be loved. I have learned to care for myself just as much as my loved ones. My love begins with self-love. If I cannot love myself, I cannot love anyone else. That includes standing up for myself. I treat myself like a friend would treat me because they are my friend for a reason. They love me for a reason. That helped me understand and know my self-worth and value. Now, I wanted to also get to the point of talking about self-love. But as I was thinking about self-love, it came across a little poetic. So I want to share that with you about my self-talk. Self-talk taught me that sometimes it rains and my mind, flooded with negative words, is all I could find. All the good words, nested as though they were dead, are hidden in the corner of my head, convinced that I could talk to me so that I could be set free. Like my faith that's near and dear, there is no reason for me to fear. I built myself up with confidence and courage, no longer riding in a baby carriage. Although I do not fully comprehend, self-talk is like talking to a friend. Oh yeah, self-talk has the power to lift me up or to devour. Which one did I choose? To be a winner and not to lose. So drop me a line and let me know that you are fine. Thank you, and let me know what you think about it. It was just some poetry that, you know, ran through my thoughts as I was thinking about talking to you about self-talk and how my expression of it, how I feel about self-talk. And don't forget, drop me a line and let me know that you are fine. So now, here are some actionable steps. 1. Start keeping a journal. Focusing Focus on writing about your emotions. If you commit to this long enough, you might notice specific patterns that could lead to more emotional insight. Number 2, set a simple goal. It can it cannot be so simple that you don't even have to work at it, but it should be something you could finish in a few weeks or months. Write the goal down in detail and add a deadline. And number 3, attack your new goal. You wrote your goal down. You know what you want to accomplish. What are you waiting for? Think of a step you can take right now and just do it, as Nike say. Reflection time. Let me leave you with a few quotes to reflect on. Boosting emotional resilience. C.S. Lewis said, "If you want to get warm, you must stand near the fire. If you want to be wet, you must get into the water. If you want joy, power, peace, eternal life, you must get close to or even into the thing that has them." Nelson Mandela said, "Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again." And lastly, what's near and dear to my heart, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8. "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair." That brings us to the end of this episode. I hope these tips were beneficial and motivated you to boost your emotional wellness. As always, thanks for listening to Let's Heal Again, Heal Together. Peace and blessings.